Hello everyone, our presentation topic is Pacemaker and we're gonna talk about introduction to Pacemaker, how Pacemaker works, components and types of it, future studies and additional questions and answers. So a pacemaker is a medical device that regulates irregular heartbeat. It's placed in chest or abdomen by surgical procedure. The pacemaker continuously monitors the heartbeat and delivers electrical energy to pace the heart. And the pacemaker also stores information about the heart. This allows doctor to better evaluate the therapy. And it's an overview history of cardiac pacing. In 1950s, there were some studies and first implementation has been done in 1958. And others are newer and future studies which will be talked in this presentation later. And now approximately 3 million patients lives with pacemaker and 1 million with ICD device. So what's ICD device then? It's acronym for implantable cardiac defibrillators and is actually very similar to pacemaker, but it has some additional functions like it shock the heart if it detects a dangerous rhythm. And we need to know heart anatomy and physiology to understand pacemaker function well. So I'm going to give a brief information about heart conduction system pathway. It consists of 5 main elements, which are sinoatrial node, internodal atrial pathway, anteroventricular node, bundle of HIS, and Purkinje fibers. And SA node is actually very important for us because it generates electrical stimuli. So it's called a natural pacemaker of the heart. And during conduction, an impulse begins in SA node and causes the atria to contract. Then impulse moves to AV node and down the bundle branches, which causes the ventricles to contract. And it moves through the Purkinje fibers. This impulse creates an electrical current that's called electrocardiogram. And doctors have an idea of cardiac contraction system by looking electrocardiogram. And diseases heart may cause impulse preventation in SA node or impulse conducting inhibition. And these diseases result with arrhythmia. So pacemakers are used in these cases to control arrhythmia. And it's the schematic representation of a pacemaker, and I'm going to explain the function of components. We have output circuit in here, and it contains output section and voltage multipliers. Multiple capacitors can be used to achieve the desired output voltage. And we have a sensing circuit also, and this circuit filters unwanted frequencies. The process signal is compared with a reference voltage to determine if signal exceeds a threshold detection level or not. And the power supply, we have a battery in here, and lithium iodine batteries are used in general. It needs to be reliable, and longevity is important. A microprocessor we have in here, and they have several advantages like circuit density, and they reduce current drain greatly. RAM is of course used to store diagnostic information. And we have a timing circuit here. Exit signals are sent to timing circuit and logic circuit. Pacing cycle length, alert periods, pulse duration, and AV interval are precisely regulated by timing circuit. And also we have some additional sensors. Current pacemakers are programmable to different modes, and we can see here 5 different modes. Pacemaker can be followed via trans-telephonic monitoring or removed via wireless technology. They offer only limited interrogation data and pacemaker information to monitoring physician. One of the disadvantages of remote monitoring is not permitting programming or changes to pacemaker. Now Beyza will talk about pacemaker components.
Now I will talk about pacemaker components. A basic pacing system is made up of pulse generator and pacing leads. I will start with pulse generator. which is a small metal battery operated computer. It has a metal box that includes external lead connectors, and inside the case there are a circuitry that controls pacemaker operations and a lithium iodide battery that's an energy for sending electrical impulses. And if you look at the circuitry, there are telemetry antenna, clock, and there are other particular functions in that. Another one is pacing leads, which are flexible insulated wires, and they have two ends, the connector tip and electrode tip, joined by the conductor, which is surrounded by insulation. And I will explain these components one by one. I will start with electrodes, which delivers a stimulus to myocardium and detects intercardiac signals. And there are some form of fixation mechanism at the tip. One of them is passive fixation leads that become lodged in the trabecle, which is fibrous meshwork of the heart. Other one is active fixation leads, which extends into the endocardial tissue and allows for a lead positioning anywhere in the heart chamber. Other one is conductor, which delivers electrical impulses from pulse generator to electrode and again returns sends intercardiac signals to pulse generator. And there are two types of leads. One of them has one pacing conductor, we call it unipolar lead. Other one have one pacing conductor and one sensing conductor, we call it bipolar leads. And there are different types of forms like coaxial, coradial, coil cables, parallel coils. Other one is insulations, which contain electrical current and prevent corrosion. Other one is connector pin, which fits into generator head. One or two separate junctions depending on whether the lead is uni or bipolar. And there are two types of pacemaker. One of them is temporary pacemaker, and this is for short-term use, and it is class 3 device. Other one is permanent pacemaker, which is for long-term use, and this is also class 3 device. I will start with permanent pacemaker, which are intended for long-term use. They last approximately 6 to 12 years. The generator is implanted in subcutaneous pocket using the endocardial or epicardial approach. It is usually made up of titanium, which is inert in the body. And there are four types of permanent pacemaker. One of them is single chamber pacemaker, which uses one lead in the upper or lower chamber of the heart. Other one is dual chamber pacemaker, which uses one lead in the upper chamber and one lead in the lower chamber of the heart. And it assists the heart in coordinating the function between the atria and ventricles. So it is like a natural pacing of the heart. Other one is biventricular pacemaker, which uses three leads placed in the right atrium, right ventricle, and left ventricle via coronary sinus swine. And it is more complicated to implant. Other one is rate responsive pacemaker, which has sensors that detect changes in the patient's physical activity like wake up, sitting, walking, running, and automatically adjust the pacing rate to fulfill the body's metabolic needs. This is single chamber or unipolar pacemaker. This is dual chamber or bipolar pacemaker. And this is biventricular pacemaker. And you can see this is more complicated than the others. And if we talk about permanent pacemaker, we should also consider about contraindications. Patients should avoid magnetic resonance imaging machines or other large magnetic files because it may affect the programming or function of the pacemaker. Also, the repeatedly changing magnetic field within the MRI scanner can cause heating of the pacemaker leads. And they should avoid diathermy, which is the use of heat in physical therapy or to treat muscles, and they should avoid carrying a cell phone in the breast pocket over the pacemaker or ICD, and they should be careful about transcutaneous electrical nerve stimulation, which treats certain pain conditions, and it may interfere with the pacemaker. And now Mehmet will continue with the temporary pacemaker.
Hi, I'll explain you temporary pacemakers and then future studies of pacemakers. So let's continue with how we are going to temporarily pace patients. We can do transcutaneous, transvenous, which is something that's also referred as endocardial, and finally epicardial pacing. Now for the transcutaneous pacing, this is going to be where we provide electrical shocks via pads on the patient's skin to cause cardiac contraction. This is a technique that we are going to use in emergency situations that require immediate pacing. In this technique, defibrillator is used as a pulse generator, so it means defibrillator works on pacer mode. The pads are going to be the leads that deliver electrical energy. Here are the pads or leads replacement on the body. These are attached to right sternum and apex on the body. Because we are delivering the electrical energy to the heart via the patient's skin, this is going to require much more energy than the other methods. So this should only be used as a short-term temporary measure. So now let's talk about transvenous or endocardial pacemakers. In this setup, we are going to have pacing leads, and these are going to be inserted through a large vessel, usually either the internal jugular or the subclavian, and these are going to be passed through the heart, so the end of the catheter can either rest in the atrium or in the ventricle down in the apex. And then once we attach this catheter to an external pulse generator, electrical signals can be passed directly to the endocardium of the heart. The big distinction with transvenous pacing is that it's going to be more reliable and much more comfortable for the patient when we are comparing this to the transcutaneous pacing. In addition, transvenous pacing method is just for temporary and reversible conditions, or if patients are waiting to get a permanent pacemaker. So then on to the last way in which is going to treat like transvenous pacing is going to be epicardial pacing. As you know, the epicardium is the outer layer of the heart, and it forms the inner layer of the pericardium that surrounds the heart muscle. As the name suggests, these leads are going to deliver their electrical energy directly to either the atrium or the ventricle by being attached to the epicardium. These type of leads going to be placed during cardiac surgery and then pulled out through the chest wall and stored in. These leads are then going to be available to temporarily externally pace if surgeons need to, and they're actually going to use the same equipment as the transvenous pacing. Now let's continue with the future studies of pacemakers. Batteryless wireless pacemaker was introduced by the researchers. The device harvests energy wirelessly from radio frequency radiation transmitted by an external battery pack. The wireless power transmitter is a few centimeters away. The device has been successfully tested in a pig, but unfortunately there is no document about appliance on human body. On the other hand, when considering the future of pacemakers, few ever thought that science would find a way to turn cells into pacemakers themselves. Recent work details are how human pluripotent stem cells can develop into pacemaker cells in just 21 days and enabling them to regulate heartbeats with electrical impulses. So far, the group of scientists has tested these pacemaker cells in rats and have found that they can function as a biomedical pacemaker by triggering the contraction of the heart through electrical impulses. The group hopes that in time they can develop a biological pacemaker that can be implanted into patients to improve cardiac care. So the last and I think the most important study is development of leadless and wireless pacemaker introduced by Medtronic. New leadless systems that can provide pacing to one chamber of the heart are now available. However, pacing therapy is typically delivered to multiple chambers of the heart in a synchronized manner, and the bulky size and shape of the new leadless pacemakers don't allow for the multiple chamber pacing, but it can still be considered as the best development of recent times. There are a lot of study that is ongoing, but has not been concluded. We hope that these studies will result positive in the fastest way and provide people more comfortable and quality life. Our presentation ended here. You can solve the questions at the end of the presentation by stopping the video, and you can check their answers. Thank you for listening.